Welcome back to War is Stupid, an anti-war podcast about war. My name is Orli Matlow, a comedian turned activist. Have finally come around to the term activist because
The revolution should be irresistible and fun, and we could be both.
exactly, and passivity should be the thing that's frowned upon, not activism. So my guest today is a very cool rabbi. It's important for me to platform rabbis with good politics. The last 2 years have been embarrassing for both of our professions, be it rabbis and stand-up comedians / podcasters, be it Andrew
A
Shaw.
shocking number of both are willing to work with Saudi Arabia under the right conditions.
Yeah. So yes, please welcome Rabbi Margo Hughes-Robinson. So
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
yes, so please, first question is, tell us about your work and whether or not it's controversial that you're on a podcast called War is Stupid, an anti-war podcast about war. Because
Controversial to whom?
Yeah.
I've got a cool board, thank God. But yeah, I'm a rabbi. I was ordained in the conservative movement, and I run an NGO that's been around for I think over 30 years now, called Partners for Progressive Israel. Back in the day, it was also called Merits USA, and what we do is connect American progressives in the Jewish community and beyond to progressive movements and leaders on the ground in Israel and Palestine. So that's everybody from elected leaders. We have a historic and current relationship with the Meretz Party that's now part of the Democrat team movement in Israel. They're the Democrats, but in Hebrew. And then as well as a number of NGOs, folks on the ground, thought leaders, academics, social movements. So we run the gamut. But if you want to be in relationship with people on the ground creating change, who have like a real progressive vision for a just future for Israelis and Palestinians, we're your home.
That's amazing. And I want to hear about your journey to that position because our episode today is called "The French Are Innocent?" I wanted to do an episode on old-timey colonizers because they've popped up in previous episodes, like, vintage vinyl warmongers. Like,
They're always there.
it came up in the episode about war crimes with Jess Solomon. She explained that the genocide in Rwanda was straight up just made up by the German Empire and that they created the ethnic
Like
divide.
fomented by the Belgians. Yeah, the Belgians. The Belgians. I'm doing great. It's been a great year. I'm really doing well.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the French and the Flemish. The Flemish are not getting enough crap in all of this.
No, yeah, we just call the Flemish are worthy of, I guess, being confused for the snot and the cold season at the back of our throat.
Okay.
It's like,
if anyone is being confused for snot, I think Leopold is a willing contender.
yeah,
Should be.
yeah, they don't get enough shit. It was only
Really not.
I was walking around the Union Square holiday market and there was a stand for yay authentic artisanal Belgian chocolate, and then not to be the friend that's too woke, as they say, but I've read too much to know that
Like
chocolate,
Namibia would like a word.
exactly, chocolate doesn't even, there are no cacao plants in Belgium.
Beautiful trees and lots of beer in Bruges, but yeah, chocolate is not. It doesn't grow there. It's not where cacao comes from.
No, they don't deserve the credit. And then also the French came up in particular in the neuroscience episode, an episode with Dr. Nicholas Wright. He writes about in his book about how the French couldn't help but welcome the Nazis in to occupy them because they were just too demoralized, too overwhelmed. Their brains could not catch up to the element of surprise that the Germans, and that's very generous.
Yes, I will say, my family lived in France for about 6 years, and I once took an ex to visit them with me when they were living here, and we were walking around. I was like, "Oh, this is like so beautiful." We're like in front of Notre Dame. This is before it caught on fire, and I was like, "What are you thinking about?" And like thought there was going to be this romantic moment, and they said, "I'm just thinking about how this is a country that values its architecture more than human beings."
Yeah.
Like how all the Jews were just sold out. That's what I'm thinking about right now. Of like all the things they threatened to bomb, and then vulnerable populations were given over. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and even that reflects. When I went to Paris, it's the essential like Hajj to Mecca for white women. I went to Paris
Totally.
for the first time in 2021 because like that's where Carrie Bradshaw's up. Rachel from Friends. It's like an essential part of any sitcom finale. Um, but then I went to the Arc de Triomphe, and one of the blurbs was like, wow, it's been standing since Napoleon. Thank you so much. And they're like, wow, like even the Nazis respected the Arc de Triomphe so much that instead of marching through, they walked aside it as not to desecrate it. Like, oh my gosh, thank you, Nazis, for showing respect.
You're respecting Napoleon.
Yeah.
Great. Love that
So
for us. Love that for everyone in North Africa and Europe.
yes, so exactly. So when I asked you if you wanted to do the show, you responded, it's one of my favorite like DMs. It was, God, yes, let me drag the French and talk about Pied Noirs in Algeria and the Vichy and a generation of Sephardic Jewish philosophers who kept insisting an author's personal biography was irrelevant to their work. Looking at you, Derrida.
It is like wild that like Derrida was like, it doesn't matter. Don't look at it. Don't. It doesn't matter where we're from, and we should not. That's not death of the author. I don't want to talk about my mom. I don't want to talk Algeria. Like, and you're like, everyone like Camus to Sixou, right? We're like, yes, a great idea for us personally.
So yes, tell me more. So how old were you when you lived in France? Did you get the
So
French education?
I don't count in a way. I was already in college, and then my family up and moved. We were there for 5 or 6 years. So my sister graduated high school there, but in the like American system. But my brother started in the American system. He's 12 years younger than me, and then switched into the French school system, which is like brutal.
Ooh.
My mom loved to be like, like liberté, égalité, fraternité. My French is terrible. I clearly did not go through the French school system. She was like, happiness is like not in their Declaration of Independence or their Constitution. It is a different world. They do not like. They're like, let these kids wail on each other in the playground. Like, she was like, we're dealing with a different animal educationally. Um, it was just yeah, it was like a bigger culture shock than I think we all anticipated, and I'm like so wary of going like right. I had my experience. I think my parents and my siblings had their own experiences also, but I definitely by the time my family had moved back to the U.S., I had also lived in Israel on and off, in Jerusalem particularly, and in Massachusetts and in New York, and I left with a deep resentment for I should say not all French, but Parisians in particular. And it's really experiencing a really different level of cultural chauvinism that I then again think is very specific to Paris. But a great example is I was visiting my family once. I was out with my brother, and we were like looking at I think like in the window of a Chinese restaurant, trying to figure out like what we could order and what have you. And this woman approached my brother and started speaking to him in French, and heard him switch from English to French, spoke, great accent, fluent in French, and then switched back to English with me. And she came over to me and asked in English, like, is he with you? And I was like, yes, ma'am, this is my brother. Like, can we have him? He goes, his French is perfect. He has no accent. It's perfect. He is completely assimilated. What is wrong with you?
Oh. it, yeah, there. I remember I when I was in Paris, I did a stand-up show, which was amazing. It's always fun doing like
Fabulous.
stand-up elsewhere in the world and knowing like it doesn't matter where you are, but all comedians have the same brain disease that makes us want to do this. And there was an American going through the process of trying to get French citizenship, and like they go even deeper than American exceptionalism. Like he picked up a new
Yes.
sport that I forget what it's called, just to like show it was a sport I had never heard of, just to show that he can assimilate into French society.
Yeah, my family went through the French green card process, and it's intense.
Yeah, what did they have to do? What did they have to learn?
The thing that, like, again, this is because my sister was a teenager. Like, the big thing we walked away with, they're like, you just everyone has to get a chest X-ray, and it's just a room of half naked people. Like, it's just a rude introduction to, like, again, very different cultural norms. Like, they are gonna move around with the chest X-ray machine, and like everybody's just there, bra off, ready for the chest X-ray
Oh
to
my
like
God.
prove that you are not bringing tuberculosis into France.
Oh, that's so chic. That's so like they know that like all the old-timey yeah, Toulouse-Lautrec sexy tuberculosis
Yeah, we
chic
don't do that anymore. That's
paintings.
not for us. Yeah, I will say actually I was supposed to be in France next week. My brother was living there, and then had to come home. We unfortunately had a death in the family, so we are
I'm
my
so
my toddler
sorry.
is deeply upset because he keeps being like, "I was supposed to go to Paris, and now I have to go to Alabama, and I don't even know what Alabama is." I was like, "That's on me. You should know this. I'm sorry. This is your first introduction to Alabama." Um, another reason to have my grandparents be disappointed ultimately in me.
Yeah, how do you do, where do you even begin? How do you train someone for go to Alabama? Roll Tide?
This is Gulf Coast and like actually very culturally connected to New Orleans. So French colonialism is in fact the answer.
Oh wow, yeah.
The oldest Mardi Gras in America is not New Orleans, it's in Mobile, Alabama, where I am flying to in 2 days.
Oh wow. Yeah, they were everywhere. Like
Truly.
it was so I wonder if people in Louisiana were like, "Oh my God, we were so close to getting French citizenship," and like, "God damn it, Thomas Jefferson for selling us out." Was it? It was him who did the Louisiana Purchase.
He did. I mean, I think again, there are other things I am much more angry at Thomas Jefferson
Yes,
for both doing personally and facilitating, but that's up there. Yeah, I was. Yeah, with Lewis and Clark, right? That's a terrible. I like know my like Middle Eastern history and European history very well, and U.S. history. Like I took AP U.S. history, and then it just
that's a good seg because I do want to talk about Middle Eastern history. So I was telling you a bit about it. So last Rosh Hashanah 2024. So is that like 57, 80? Whatever 80, 85,
26. Yes, so 85 would have been the last one.
85. I sat through what was just an absolutely awful sermon. I was home and the rabbi decided to use like the sermon on what is supposed to be one of the like holiest days of the year, a day for spiritual renewal and connection, to talk about the Peel Commission and
That's a strong choice. I mean, I'm not here to criticize a colleague's choices.
yeah.
It's high stress, getting a high holiday to sermon together, and like, wow, deep cut.
So it was crazy. So I ended up getting so angry and walking home and just writing notes on my phone because I'm like, I'm gonna need to use this one day. And here I am using it. So I wrote
I know I have to get my phone with my notes up now.
yeah. But I said like walking home from synagogue because the sermon gave me a panic attack. It was absolutely everything I hate. Having a panic attack because the sermon was so bad and needing to walk home to cool off is very Jewish actually.
Yes.
But she said, so the Peel Commission was like under the British mandate, the British discussing what to do with Palestine with no input from Palestinians, which
Mhm.
I'd say m- might
It's a
have
dynamic that continues until this day.
exactly. And it's like why we're in this mess. So here's what I wrote. I wrote, citing the Peel Commission is not helpful. You don't fight allegations of settler colonialism by citing settler colonialism. Palestine was not the British's to give away. It's not helpful. Instead of citing Torah to dispute land claims, just give everyone equal rights and see if that helps more than oppressive military rule. The profound history of Jewish suffering should not be used as an excuse to make other people suffer. It should make us empathetic. And then at the end is, today was a moth story, a funny anecdote with profound resonance, making me feel closer to my grandpa. So the
That's always I honestly always a good feeling. If I walk out a show closer to my grandpa, of recently blessed memory. I feel like I've nailed it.
Yes, because yeah, he was heckling too. And when you're 97, you can heckle the sermon at full volume. So not until later.
Oh, I have so many things to say about like the mandate and the yishuv and the, like just what gets lost, right? Because I also do think there's this narrative of right talking about narratives. There's this narrative that um right everybody who's involved in the aliyah movements, the first aliyah and second aliyah, was like entirely from Eastern Europe, and then people dispel that narrative also to be like, so this in no way can be related to a larger conversation about colonialism or like a project of aliyah that displaced Palestinians. I was like, again, Jewish teaching, right? A heart of many rooms. It can all be true, right? But like this is I'll just do the like rundown, right? That we do. This is not a complete history, but I think is like a helpful grounding that we don't talk about enough. That like the land that comprises the current state of Israel had been a part of the Ottoman Empire from like 1517 until the end of World War II. Why we have Lurianic Kabbalah, right? Is that like Sephardic Jewish teachers could like come from Spain and from other parts of the Mediterranean, actually come back to the Galil, to like the northern part of what is now the state. And we're doing all this incredible writing up by like Mount Meron. It's fat, but even beyond this, right? So we have 1517 till the end of World War One, and that is when like the Sykes-Picot Agreement is happening, right? We have the triple entente of like a little French, of Russia and of France and of
World War One, episode 1 of the podcast, if you're not
exactly right.
familiar.
And then like the best is that right, the Russian Revolution happens, and the Bolsheviks are like, everything's public, like we're publishing every secret agreement, and then the French and British newspapers are like, oh no, shit, we're gonna have to do this in public now, right? But like this wave, the first Aliyah was like both people from Eastern Europe, Jews from Eastern Europe, and from Yemen. And there was like a small population of Jews living in Palestine, but like a majority Arab population, and that Palestinian nationalism is like fomenting in conversation with Jewish nationalism in the land. Um, right. But what I always think is wild is that like Zionism, the political movement, right, is like happening in like Western and Central Europe and like Switzerland. But like those are not the guys who are moving there for the most part. Like these are actually two totally different conversations that like, revisionist history, they're like, ah, yes, it is part of one stream of political. I was like, no. But also, right, like you have the Balfour Declaration in 1917 as the Ottoman Empire is falling apart. And it's like, here is the British support for the national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. And then the Ottoman Empire collapses, and like Britain is just like, oh, great, like, thanks. Like, that's ours.
Another one, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, sorry about that, ours now. And right, and then it's the League of Nations. They're like, we exist now. Like, look at us. We're gonna issue a mandate for Palestine to Britain, right, in 1920. Like these 2 years, there's no Ottoman Empire, and the British Empire is like just there, and the League of Nations is like, oh yes, you, we trust you, guys who moved in as soon as everything fell apart to like be the colonial administrators. We have a mandate. Right, and the mandate then lasts till 1948. But like while it's there, the British are making conflicting commitments. They're talking out of both sides of their mouth the entire time. They're talking to European Jewry, not to Middle Eastern, North African Jewry in the same way, right? About support of a Jewish national home in Palestine, and then they're talking to Palestinians, the Arab population of Palestine, saying like, also we support your independence. And then they're like, oh no, everyone is fighting, and also they're fighting. Like, how could this happen? Why would they? It's like the three-way phone call in Mean Girls.
Yeah. Boo, you whore.
Yes, exactly. And the British are like, why are they bombing us? Like, oh my God, why would they blow up the King David? Why would, I'm not endorsing the Irgun and the Lechi, to be very clear. Those are not my guys, or gals. But like, this is like wild, right? That we just go like, I will say right after October 7th, like December of 2023, I was asked by a very dear colleague, deeply appreciated this, who was teaching in Switzerland, to zoom in and talk to her students in Zurich about Israel and Palestine. And they were like, well, when we read in the papers here, it's always like being pushed. There's a room full of like Muslim and Christian students mostly, no Jewish students in the class. And they were like, we keep hearing that like this is this, centuries old religious conflict and it's sort of insolvable and intractable. And I was like, mm-hmm. And I know we're in Zurich, but like, are you reading, are these French newspapers and British newspapers that are writing? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, mm-hmm. Why might it behoove a French or British narrative to be like, yeah, they just keep fighting. We don't know how or why. Everyone seems to be armed, or suddenly has an expectation of a national homeland on the land that was previously the British mandate in Palestine. I don't know where everyone got these ideas. It must be, right, that they're like religious, and then therefore, right, then all of the Orientalist tropes come in, right, like barbarous in some way, and like, right, just like it's dehumanization all over again, and it's also a total abdication of any kind of accountability and responsibility. And I'm not saying that Israelis and Palestinians, right, 100 years later, are not like also right, or at least the leaders of these governments are not responsible also, but like this is coming from somewhere and was funded from somewhere. And it's not the Jews or the Palestinians. These are not historically deeply well-funded or popular with a lot of popular support or like groups of people. It's what to be like, no, it just happened and they've been fighting forever. Like, give me a freaking break. This
And
is somebody's bottom line.
And it sounds like they're making the same mistakes again. We're recording this. It's 3:29 p.m. Eastern time, so I don't know what went on at the UN today, but whether they're going to codify British Mandate 2, Electric Boogaloo, um, Tony Blair, the Iraq War guy,
Oh my
as
God.
as governor of
Sorry, that's my
Gaza.
automatic reaction to Tony Blair.
Yeah, like one of the reasons why I was like, I need to start a history podcast is because they're just making the same mistakes over and over again. And it
Yeah.
sounds like it sounds like yeah, it's carving people out of the conversations about their own future always blows up in the face of the people imposing a system on them. So
Yeah, it's almost like you would need buy-in and people to have an illustrated self-interest in any long-term political, like people actually have to live lives that they want,
yes.
and that is like realistic and dignified for them to live. I will say there's a song that came out while I was living in Jerusalem by Dam, which I'm like sad they're not making music together. Tamar Nafar, please get the band back together. This is my personal plea. Please, please, we need more. Right, but they have a song that they never put on Spotify, but they sampled The New Jerusalem by William Blake
Ooh.
for like a song that was happening sort of around the time where there's like especially a lot of tension around Al-Aqsa and the Temple Mount. But like kind of like pointing the finger. I think it was actually for the anniversary of the Balfour Declaration. But right, like all love to William Blake, but like this song that's like very popular also in like Anglican churches and little choristers with the red robes and the this and the Archbishop of Canterbury of it all and like British boarding school. But like the whole song is like, wouldn't it be convenient if Jerusalem was in Wales
Yeah.
somewhere? Like, wouldn't it be convenient if we just had like this Jerusalem that we envision and not like the one with real people who live there and who like they're have to live with the consequences of our decision? Like, how nice if just like in our backyard in Canterbury on a little green hill was Jerusalem. It would be so convenient for us. And like British Israelism, right, is like a whole other wild wormhole of ideology and like talk about brittle narratives, right? But like I every time I like go and listen to it all the time, and it's just like, you're right, right? Like they're not dragged through the mud enough for what they did. Like, come back here and don't just apologize, but like also fund the people who are building peace directly. That's like
Yes.
something that we're pushing at partners also is like when we talk about aid, let's like think about actually what aid means in a deep investment in a future. And if things were funded like beyond the Nita Lowy fund, but there was like actual if there's financial incentives for people to like build a just, reasonable society. Okay,
Yeah, I think
all
it was
it's
Aziz Abu Sara who I saw at a Combatants for Peace thing, talking about how like naturally when they say aid to Israel, it goes to military aid. But like, what if we got just one missile's worth of investment in peace? Like,
Oh my God. Yes.
yeah, my dream, in addition to like Jerusalem and Wales, is a future where, yeah, human life is as valued as Lockheed Martin
Yes.
stocks.
And like it didn't always used to be this way, right? Like the US actually had a very like a diversified aid portfolio that they were supporting early on in Israel. Um and it's just no longer it's I think people don't realize it's entirely military aid at this point. I'm
And
like, is that how we show up as an ally and a friend? Like, are you kidding me?
yeah, anytime, like what if all of the money over the past 2 years, I feel like Kibbutz Be'eri, like could have been rebuilt with all the money spent on bombs. It's so transparently stupid unless you're either horny for violence or horny for your stock portfolio that's invested in weapon stocks.
Yes, when we came out on with a statement about military aid, we did it with combatants and with Mao Zedong and Yonatan Zaigan, and I will say it is one of the proudest moments of my career, as well as like a number of Palestinian activists.
Yes, for those who are not familiar, Maozi Nun and Yonatan Zaigan had parents who were murdered on October 7th and are now peace builders. They didn't use their platform to say revenge, revenge, like Jonathan Greenblatt or some schmucks on the Upper West Side. The people who are there and lost their families said, must speak. Like,
Yeah. So when we made this statement, is in October of 2024. Right, we said we like it's time to suspend the sale of JDAMs, joint direct attack munitions, and 120 millimeter tank rounds for use in Gaza. Of like these are not weapons that are part of the Iron Dome or used for self defense. Like these are weapons. I don't know why that's happening. These are. It's. I'm talking in my hands and now they're like the system is attempting to reward me. Right, but when we called for the suspension of sale of joint attack munitions and these larger like 120 millimeter tank rounds, this is not weapons that are used right in like self-defense or part of the Iron Dome. These are things that are used to level buildings and kill a very large number of people at once. Um right, like these are weapons that do not actually make Israelis or Palestinians or really like anybody in the wider region safer, and I was so grateful and humbled and proud, right, to make the statement actually like in cooperation with Yonatan Zaigan, whose mother was the late activist Vivian Silver of blessed memory, who was murdered on October 7th, and Maozi Nolan, but also the good folks at Combatants for Peace, their co-directors Rana Salman, Esther Karyani, right, to say like that this is not working. Right. I will say, right, like when you do the kind of work that I do, I think people assume sometimes you're like this bleeding heart leftist who like is not pragmatic at all. But I will say, right, like right after October 7th, I called my sister who has worked professionally, all right, on in Libya and Syria, in um Afghanistan and in Yemen. And I said, like, real talk, when you have a, religiously infused, far right in terms of their social mores and their vision, um, guerrilla force who is terror group like Hamas. I was like, does a war make them go away? Like if it's happening in the southern Mediterranean or the eastern Mediterranean, like does this work? And like is there have I just totally lost the plot when I'm calling for a ceasefire? People are telling me don't call for a ceasefire this early because we have to get rid of Hamas. I was like, will this actually get rid of Hamas?
or will it recruit more? Yeah.
Well, I'll say Netanyahu said in his book in 2014, he was like, oh, I mean, horrible, right? But like he says in his own book that a world in which Israel destroyed Gaza completely, God forbid, and what we're seeing is not, it's very, very close to that when you look at the satellite images. But he was like, Hamas will come back up out of, he says, I'm quoting him, these are not my words, like out of the tunnels all over again because it's an ideology. But my sister said, like, oh my God, yeah, if you're going to foment additional like civil unrest on this level and then the devastation of a war. She's like, no, it doesn't work. Like, because it just mushrooms into another form or another group, or right, if you do what Israel even has done in the last 18 months, a year, like fund other far right militia groups within Gaza to try to like, wind up with Hamas somehow had less power because you've created a gang war on top of a war of revenge and then a genocide in Gaza. Like, that's not responsible statecraft. That's not going to eliminate Hamas. But also, she's like, you can look at like 6 or 7 other countries in the same region and just go, this does not actually work. It just creates a longer term problem. This is like, in fact, part of how we wound up with groups like the Houthis, or why there are 2 Libyan governments, neither of whom are like real,
Wow.
right? And like legitimate. She was like, oh no, oh God, like I'm gonna have to just like I'm gonna be organizing some kind of food program here in 18 months. It's not going to be it's not going to work. This doesn't work. This is not a solution that actually addresses the problem.
And that's conveniently takes me to the name of the show. War is
Yeah.
stupid.
War is stupid.
It's it's
Not
it's
going to give
it's
you what you want.
stupid.
It's great
Yeah.
if you're trying to avoid a corruption charges in jail, and you never want a state commission of inquiry, even though the majority of your populace, your own freaking populace who supported the war, at one point, once, because it's what made Golda Meir have to step down from power.
Yeah.
Like, right? They had the Oregon Money Commission, and she was like, "Oh, you're right. Yep, my bad. Goodbye." Um,
I don't know
like
if
it's
that was in the Helen Mirren movie.
Was it? I refuse to. Oh my God. I saw a poster. There's a video somewhere of me like walking through the Upper West Side, seeing that poster, not knowing that movie was coming, and just starting to scream. I was at the theater to like see the Barbie movie with 2 other rabbis, and they were like, calm, like, please, can we? It was peak white feminism, frankly, and that they were like, please calm down and stop screaming about Golda Meir and Palestinians so that we can go see Barbie.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't need to see a prosthetic schnoz on Helen Mirren, on Bradley Cooper. Let's tell news stories.
Yes, exactly. And let's not, yeah, start claim that war is somehow going to get rid of a right-wing religious terrorist force. It's like it's just not how it doesn't work. It's never worked.
Yeah, very British to think. Yeah, let's just
Yes,
fu-
indeed. Oh my God, we could
fund a
just
whole
invade and
bunch of individual
slay. Yeah,
groups. Yeah.
exactly. That like with this like idea again, I get this. I think it actually fundamentally comes back to narratives, right? That like you cannot bomb a narrative away. You have to provide a viable alternative and like way for people to live, and that is not to absolve right people in Israel or in Palestine who are using far right ultra nationalist eliminationist rhetoric, right? Those people are still responsible for their words and actions and should be held accountable both in their respective countries and in international courts. And right, for those of us who are not in the thick of it, I think we actually have a responsibility to say, like, this doesn't work. But this has never worked.
Well, but he's out of prison, so congrats to BB. Yeah,
I have nothing.
I know. I'm like, I'll stop recording.
Netanyahu's dog went to jail, but they can't put Netanyahu in jail.
Wait, his dog?
The dog. He was living Bibi's dog used to bite people, and it bit people so much it had to like go to dog jail they put your dog in jail if you like can't train your dog. I know this because I have a dog that is bonkers, and I was like, oh, if Netanyahu's like Akita is not safe, like Zelda, you're going to jail. Like we gotta go to the dog psychologist. Like you gotta get under, you gotta get together. But like yes, Netanyahu's dog has gone to jail.
Oh my
But
gosh. So there's
not
precedent in the family.
There is, exactly. A family member has gone to jail and, like, been held accountable and survived. I actually
Yeah.
don't know what happened to the dog in the end. I hope it survived. It's not their fault. It's the owner. Like,
That's another, peak white feminism is I hope the dog is
is the dog
okay.
okay? Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to cover?
Oh my gosh. Let me just look really quick. Vis-a-vis France. I have a lot of spicy things to say about Israel as a safe place for Holocaust survivors, but I don't know if we want to do that.
Ooh, that's another episode.
Yeah. Of like I'm like, nobody made it to DB camps in Ma'abrot till 1951. What are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, people did, but they had to sneak in illegally.
Oh,
It's not the
tea.
large wave of Shoah survivors that you think. Like, people were actually stuck in DP camps for several years.
Because of the Israeli government.
I mean, because of a lot of issue, and like refugee law was actively being
Mhm.
written, right? And oh my God, this drives me nuts. So people are like, why does UNRWA exist? I was like, because people didn't want to include in the international community Palestinians under the normative declaration and definition of refugee. We have also published an UNRWA fact sheet because we found so many people in the American Jewish community were like, I heard something about UNRWA on the internet and it
Mhm.
made me angry. And be like, there's like actually really good UN documentation of like a number of the things you're worried about. Like there are facts that exist on the internet, how and that it just exists in international law and like in UN charters and resolutions. Like, how can we get you again? It's pastoral care, emotionally organized enough to be able to have a frank conversation. That doesn't mean we're saying it's black and white, it's good and bad, and like you just basically need to get calm. Like we're not saying calm down so that you can, agree with us, but rather like there seems to be a lot of key information that might really influence your thinking that you are missing, and you are way too jacked up to engage in a conversation and receive new information. So like how do I get you feeling safe and secure enough to have the necessary conversation and like move you? Um I feel like what I do is like sit here and write like tools for deep canvassing at your Shabbos table or like
That's amazing. I feel like between the two of us, good cop, bad cop,
perfect. Yeah,
you
this
need
is
the
me and my sister
pastoral
now at the table.
care.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about your work and your political evolution. So it's a classic trope of like un- unlearning right wing indoctrination to become a progressive. But were you raised progressive?
Oh, this is it's funny. I had a certain narrative about my own political evolution as I was younger, and like as I get to know my family better as an adult, I'm like, "Oh my God, it's actually so much more complicated." So I did not grow up in the Jewish world also. And I converted as a teenager. So I had a very Jewish adolescence and like a very Jewish adulthood. And by virtue of being the oldest sibling, also my family then moving to a completely secular country, especially when my youngest sibling was very young. We have sort of a like family interfaith. Like my little brother has gone to Passover Seders his whole life, and he joined BBYO in high school, and then graduated like as the president of his local chapter of BBYO. And when he joined, he was like, "Yeah, I'm like in charge of like the Israel programming." And I was like, "Your name is Christian.
Oh,
That's your first name. Like, how are you in charge?" He's like, "Well, I've been a bunch of times." And I've done all this stuff. And like, he started rattling off, I've done this in Jerusalem and I went to the Dead Sea and I was like, oh, you like actually, yeah, you know exactly. You're well equipped to take on this role. But politically, I moved around a lot as a kid also, but my parents are both from the South, and I went to most of middle school and high school in the South with a stint in the part of Montana where all the Nazis are. When people were like, "Did you know there's Nazis in Whitefish?" I was like, Yeah, girl, did you not? Like, we've got meth, therapeutic boarding schools, and
oh,
Nazis,
and it's
and
called
a lovely
Whitefish.
tiny Jewish community where I had my first ever Rosh Hashanah service and like a Pesach Seder in a room with a giant stuffed bear, like in a lodge somewhere.
That's fascinating and unfair that there are Nazis in Whitefish. Like that's an affront to Barney Greengrass.
Truly, I exactly. If you're gonna pick a place, that's it's so
So,
upsetting.
yes,
Everything about it is
should
upsetting.
have been Trafe, Montana.
Exactly. That sounds like a town.
Catfish.
Yes, I mean catfish could be right there. There's Flathead Valley. There's all kinds of fun names. You didn't have to pick on whitefish in particular, next to a man-made lake where there are no whitefish. But weirdly, crawfish. I was like so shocked to go to Lake Samana. I was like, my people are here. There are crawfish in Montana. I'm getting very far afield. I'm sorry. I think it's just
No,
the week
this
that
is
I'm having.
so fun.
Like
That's
rolling back in. So the running joke in my family is like they're like we're not really sure where the like Jewish or social justice mindset have been, but it was like here for the jump, and we just kind of have to respect it because you're gonna not stop. Like a favorite family joke is my family flew into New York for my 21st birthday to come visit me and from France, and my little brother was horribly jet lagged, and then I made it worse because I talk in my sleep and we shared a room on this trip, and I don't remember this, but I apparently woke him up screaming in the middle of the night, yelling, "Social justice!" And mom was like, "I don't know what's but like, dear God, he
That
wants to go to jail
sounds
and like sleep. This is not fair."
Yeah, that sounds like on Fox News. Like, yeah, your children are waking you up in the middle of the night screaming social
Exactly.
justice.
I will say my mother's first response at her house was like, "The Jew never sleeps," and I was like,
Yeah.
I don't think we can say that, mom." Uh,
Is she Jewish
but
as
you're
well?
not
Did your
wrong. She's
whole
not. No,
family
no,
convert?
no, just me.
Wow, cool.
Um, but I'm really really lucky. They're incredibly supportive and came to visit me when I was living in Jerusalem and have sat through synagogue services where they have no idea what's happening. And when I was married, like sat through a long chuppah that was, a lot in Hebrew and came to my ordination. And I'm really, really lucky. My family's like incredibly supportive and I has gone on this journey with me in a lot of different ways. So yeah, I think I I was a very obnoxious child. Like just asked a lot of questions, but also like I think came to a what was because I was what, like 8, like, like a half-baked 8-year-old's political consciousness, but I, like, had very strong feelings about, like, what is right and wrong in the world for a very long time. Like, I remember being, like, angrily against the Iraq War in, like, 2001,
Hell yeah.
2002, and, like, we were living in California at the time and, like, driving by and seeing a protest, be like, "Mom, can I, like, get out of the car?" And she's like, "We're going to soccer practice." Like, "What? Where are you getting" I think what it was is I figured out early on, my mom would let me watch watch more TV if I watched the news, in, like, early elementary school, and then it backfired. Um,
That's so
so
funny.
so it initially led to, like, a fair amount of early tension, and then I think as things have progressed, we've all kind of grown into each other. I am no longer, like, the most, loudest left-wing member of my family, which is actually a role I was really happy to cede.
Yeah, can one out social justice a social justice rabbi? That's like a high bar to clear.
My sister worked for USAID, until she was doaged,
Oh my
and
God.
did, yeah, like, food relief in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Yemen, so, like, she's just seen things
Yeah, holy
and
shit.
has come to, like, very staunch and well-earned political conclusions out of that experience.
Oh yeah, I haven't heard doged as a verb yet, but yeah, that's exactly what it was, doged.
Totally.
So yeah, there are so many crises to choose from. Um, tell me about your most recent trip to Israel. Let's work our way backwards because I
Oh
saw
my god,
that you were
let's do it.
there.
Alright. So right, a lot of what my organization does is both I would say, like, progressive and like, narrative change work, but we also like, we're sort of a bridge, I would say, between the, left flank of the manufactured mainstream, as I would call it, of the US, American Jewish institutional world, and into more progressive movements. So you will, like, see us organizing rallies, right, with both J Street, but also If Not Now. And we are actually often serving as sort of the connective tissue between those worlds. And so one of our, I would say like inside jobs, right, are in like a harm reduction capacity. We co-ran a slate in the World Zionist Congress, which is a body that truly on some level to me is baffling that it still exists. But I am not the kind of person who gets in a room and then goes like, well, what do we do? So we passed while we were there a resolution that I helped to write that will ban any future WZO, the World Zionist Organization, and these internal national organization bodies that fund and sometimes serve as like the national landlord of all state land in Israel. These like the Jewish National Fund, Kakal. Anyway, this resolution that we passed among a whole slate of other resolutions at this Congress was to forbid any WZO funded institutions or the WZO to fund any institutions who are doing any kind of future illegal Israeli settlement activity in Gaza. This is also like within the yellow line even. Which is feels like, I really thought we were going to we're going to be in the room because we're going to say the hard things. And if no one else in this body is going to talk about human rights, my job is to be there, get yelled at, probably get doxxed by the ZOA and stand up and shift the Overton window. And instead it was oh, we passed some serious legislation. The Jewish world is actually really sick of this shit, and willing to move. And I think we don't give our the again, manufactured mainstream, or the way we think of the mainstream Jewish community, actually enough credit for the way that people have seen what has been happening on the ground in Gaza these past 2 years, and actually shifted deeply in ways that make them uncomfortable. But people are not immune to what has been happening, even if they are not changing the name of the ideologies they subscribe to.
Yeah, and something I speak of often on the podcast is how I'm just fully bored of names. Who gives a shit about what words mean, as long as the moral compass, the empathy, the seeing other people's humanity is there. So, oh wow, I'm so relieved to hear that, because I think yeah, I feel like we were on a much like Portuguese trope. It's not a linear journey.
Orly, I hate to disabuse it. It is locked down.
Yeah.
I'm please divorce Memorial until its notions of what Sephardic music canon does sound like. The Amsterdam of the UK. It is so deeply in what people would recognize as a Western music scale. It's fancy.
Yeah.
It's silk top hat. It's silk top hat Amsterdam. It is not. We are not as cool as the rest of the Sephardic world, as the rest of the tomato Jews.
Oh, yeah,
Right? If we're saying tomato Jews and potato Jews, it's still a Western. Spain is deep into the Atlantic.
yeah. I'm a proud potato Jew. I still have very much like a shtetl palate. My favorite foods are just variations on potatoes and bread. But
I did take my kid to the B&H Dairy for the first time this weekend, and it was a big moment
oh
for
my
us.
God, shehecheyanu.
We had a mushroom knish. I was really proud.
Aw.
So we're it's a wide palette of exposure.
But
But he will learn Sephardic Portuguese trope for his parents.
that's so bad. But I was gonna say, yeah, it hasn't been a linear progression towards. Um, I feel like we did feel the community shift, and that they were willing to defend a ceasefire deal, whether or not it's actually a ceasefire deal. Speaking of the confusion of what words
Yeah.
mean is up in the air. But then the drama over the New York City mayoral election really bummed me out.
And how?
Yeah.
I would say I run a 501c3, but I was on Israeli news. I thought I was speaking to I-24 English. I was not, and it was 12:15 a.m. the night after Soron was elected, originally to talk about the World Zionist Congress, but then they were like, "You're into Mamdani, you should talk about that also." And it literally was under here. It was Rabbi Margo, who lives in Brooklyn, Jew who supports Mamdani, and I was like, "Oh, we're doing this."
Oh my God.
Excuse me. My kid actually woken up and was like I am now, just hiding directly under my shoulder off camera, while I in Hebrew was yes, people should learn and grow and apologize when they intentionally or not say things that are hurtful to communities. And also, it is. I don't really care if you want to label it. I'm actually very scared about how you define your Zionism. If you're labeling anti-Israel, anti-Zionism to say I am against a system in the land that recognizes the human rights of Jews living in the land and not other people.
Especially
I'm like, is that how you want to frame being against that system is inherently anti-Israel or anti-Zionist? We're telling on ourselves if that's the impulse.
did you say that in Hebrew on Israeli TV?
I did with the help of some anxious last minute Google.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Were they receptive to it, do you think, or
They
they
were
were
like,
just
okay, cool, thank
scandalized?
you. Actually, the best part was hearing them discuss it right after. And really more of the anxiety. The conversation quickly shifted to Well, like if New York is the symbol of capitalism, like how can they elect a socialist mayor? Like America is the beating heart of global capitalism, and like what does it mean that Zohar Mamdani is a socialist? And the best was to hear like a Hebrew speaking like panel start yelling about coastal elites. They were like, "Ze lo b'chofim, ze mashu acher b'chofim." Like it's something totally different on the coast. They were like San Francisco, LA, New York, ze mashu acher. I was like, oh my god, this discourse is like being replicated, but like just at such a different tenor, in different languages. This is fascinating. Like I'm just at a Shabbos table right now, but it's past midnight to make the 7 o'clock news in Israel in the morning.
That's so funny. La bachofim. Yeah, and it's funny because in Israel it's the reverse. Like it's the periphery that like the elites are in the cities, and then the periphery is where the more, I don't know, Fox News every.
I'm like waiting to hear what you're about to
I
say
know,
about
eh?
Israel's
Yeah.
periphery. Yeah, I mean, and the periphery, right, has also always been a not to get all Ruth Wilson Gilmore about it, right? But like what gets pushed to the margins physically, Ruth Wilson Gilmore writes about it vis-a-vis prisons, but like is also what is marginalized in a national imagination. Right? Like I was in Yerucham actually in May and talking to people from Yerucham, one of these development towns, who were like, the term development town on some level is so offensive that you like pushed a bunch of like in the case of Yerucham, a bunch of Moroccan people who said like we would like to go to Jerusalem, and they were like, get on the bus to Jerusalem. They're like, it's a night bus. And then they woke up, they were like, what, where are we? And they're like, not in Jerusalem. And if you attempt to move to Jerusalem, we'll find you and bring you back. You live in Yerucham, because this is a development town. We have like, just conquered this area post 1948, and we you will be developing the town, and we will be developing you from like a very frankly like racist set of assumptions about like who Jews from North Africa were.
Yeah, damn. That's yeah, a history I know a little about.
Oh my god, all right, are we gonna like get into the Ella Shohat of it all? I would so love to.
Please.
Okay, she's fabulous. There is Ella Shohat as a I mean, everything she writes is incredibly thoughtful, but Ella Shohat has a really great article. I think that's in like a film anthology somewhere about the Israeli movie Salah Shabati. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, I've definitely heard of it.
Okay, but like what is crazy, and there's a great Yehudim Bayim, like the Jews are coming sketch about how ridiculous this casting choice is that Salah Shabati is like about a Jewish immigrant from North Africa, right? And like the development of like Mizrahi as a political term within Israel for like, right, that's like based on an Orientalist conception of who Jews from North Africa and the Middle East and also like Western Asia and like that's one group. Is like wild, right? So many different cultures and languages and traditions, and also like right as a rabbi, like halachic traditions, like bonkers, right? To that this is collapsed into but it's also a very like convenient state identity, and then one that becomes meaningful right through the shared experience of this marginalization, but also like talk to some Mizrahi Jews, which I am not. Not the authority on this experience. But anyway, has this fabulous essay on Salah Shabati. And like, right, that it like rhymes or sounds very like a Hebrew phrase to say like, Slicha Shabati, like, I'm sorry that I
Yeah.
came. But cast to play the main character is Chaim Topol from Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh my god.
Like, fully.
Literally.
Yeah, like I mean, like grew up in the Mandate, like has been around for a while, but like putting on an accent
Oh no.
to play this like this Ashkenazi guy.
That's like post Steven Spielberg West Side Story. I feel like it now that it exists, there's no reason to watch Natalie Wood as Maria.
Well, we always have Casablanca also. This is my like Israeli film history nerd. Do you know Casablanca?
Yes,
And like
that
we have also like a Ashkenazi Mizrahi
West Side Story. It was
Romeo and Juliet, West Side Story, like with very Jerome Robbins inflected dance moves.
They did it at my high school, the Community Hebrew Academy of Toronto. There was an English play and a Hebrew play, very camperma of them. And if you were in the Hebrew play, then you get extra marks for Hebrew, um,
Nice.
for Hebrew classes. And yeah, the first ever Hebrew play was Casablanca, and I just remember demo demokratia, and
It's pretty catchy.
and it's come up over the last couple of years with the
Yeah.
democracy protests. So, have you been involved in protests when you were in Israel?
Yes, quite a bit. I will say I also lived in Jerusalem for 2 different years in my early 20s. And the first year I think I was really wary because I just had this experience where my family moved to France to be like, okay, should I like take my very American like political understanding and try to like map it directly onto an Israeli Palestinian context? And so I would say the first year I was there was very wary, and then the second year I was there I was like, I think I know how like where I want to get involved and what's the best use of my time and actually how I do fit in into this political spectrum. And so the second time I was there I was in rabbinical school, but I was also doing a human rights fellowship for rabbinical students. And so I was like doing protective presence out in the West Bank. There's like a photo of like baby Margo in her 20s, like baby Rabbi Margo with a pickaxe, like replanting olive trees in a huerta that had been uprooted by settlers, like right under the village of Itamar, right? And you're literally in the shadow of this settlement, because you can look up on the hill and be like, there's like, we're in a huerta on farmland and that people cannot always access, right? And then there's Itamar. Like right on, actually, when I was naming my kid, whose name I'm not going to share on this podcast, but like I had a list of names that I really, really loved. And anytime I found it was the name of a settlement, like it had to go off so like he's not named Itamar, he's not named Evyatar, like
Oy, Gush Etzion, GE for
yeah,
short.
exactly. That was right out.
Y-
Yeah. And so I was more involved in, and actually I will say a big shift in my political consciousness and work, like the moment it broke open for me vis-a-vis Israel and Palestine was actually my introduction to community organizing was around like convert rights and convert status within Israel, because Jews by choice have an incredibly difficult time navigating like Jewish identity things, both because of the ultra-Orthodox monopoly, but like also because of the way that race functions in Israel. And I figured out really fast that I, as a white convert, was having a much, much easier time than black and brown converts, right? Who had gone through the same Batei Din, the same systems, and like who were not getting state funding that they were entitled to. And we can debate, right? Should Jews from the diaspora coming to study in Israel and like the money, the way in which like it's not just that you're welcomed in, but like given state funding worthy of critique by cracking it for the purpose of this anecdote. But like the first time I went to the Knesset was like to lobby with Rabbi Andy Sachs of blessed memory about the treatment of like African conservative converts in and from Kenya and Uganda, specifically from like established communities in Kenya and Uganda who are part of the conservative movement, who like are treated like crap once they got to Israel. And like often were, you know, homeless because they were not like given the funding that everybody else from Masa or these other organizations to study in institutions were receiving.
Wow, that's amazing. Has that changed? Did they, or I guess this government.
You know, I would say that happened, and then right, Barkan Winery started like firing all of its Ethiopian employees. So even like Black Israeli citizens started, and then there was right, the movement for Black Lives also like was expressed in these like anti police violence protests and asylum seeker issues in Israel, and so like it was kind of this whole ball of like the treatment of Black people in Israel. Um, but I will say additionally, I worked on the campaign with the Venezuela Nine, who are a group of three different families from Venezuela who were like denied the ability to make Aliyah for a long time with really horrific consequences. And when I just got into Israel for my second year, got into Jerusalem, and I got a call from my mentor actually to like he said one of the parents from one of these families has passed away. They're still living in an absorption center in Beersheba. The family doesn't speak any Hebrew yet. Um, and my mentor was in the U.S., but he is from Colombia originally, and he was like, "I'm gonna write the chesped in Spanish, and you just did your rabbinic internship in Guatemala, so like I trust your Spanish reading." But like, you need to go find Andy Sachs, Rabbi Andy Sachs of blessed memory, get in the car, drive down to the only non-Orthodox cemetery in Israel, which is in Beersheba, and like do this funeral on my behalf, like as a shaliach, as an emissary,
Wow.
and deliver the chesped, the eulogy. And it was, oh my God, it was so beautiful. It was, and it was like, so everything about this was deeply distressing, and I was like supposed to be there as a translator, and frankly like was so overwhelmed. It was my first time co-officiating a funeral. I did not do my job. I will say, my co-officiant was like, "How do you say in Spanish, the Sochnut has blood on its hands?"
Oh,
And I
yeah.
was like, "I am gonna make a pastoral intervention and ask that we keep that in the car.
Yeah.
This is not the time to say that. They know that. They're living with it. Uh, we don't need to we don't say that out loud." Um, but I think it really started unraveling because I went into my, I went to a lot of mentors after that, and I said, like, I have been told, and the narrative I've been given, the justification I've been given for the occupation, for, like the long-term and systemic dehumanization and political negation, right, under these systems of Palestinians has been to keep Jews safe. And like, this is not a country actually that lets all Jews in. And this is not a country that when Jews have nowhere else to go and their country is running out of medical care and they have complex medical needs, like they're not being allowed to Israel. And it's being very clearly said because they're brown and because they're not Orthodox. And so, like, what does that mean? That, like, the basic justification or, like, the line that people would go to say, well, like, just in case we need Israel as a backup. I was like, okay, if Israel isn't a backup for all Jews, what does that mean about the rest of these narratives? And I remember sitting with one mentor and he said, like, Margo, the questions that you're raising, right, if we started answering them, a lot of base beliefs would really unravel. And I said, yeah, Rabbi, that's why I'm in your office. I'm struggling. And he was like, I can't go there.
Oh, wow. That's why I started this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm
And I was like, okay, so I need to get out of the classroom and be doing this, and get to a warta and like get to, um, Bedouin villages that were being destroyed and, like get out here and basically get out of the stories that I was being told. And I am really fortunate and also really privileged that I was able to like access and meet with people and build relationships with people who really challenged, the stories that I had been told as, um, as a teenager and then as a young adult. I will say that I also, though, speaking of the Sochnut, the first year I was living in Israel, was like asked to join a bus full of, um, people from the Jewish agency, and they were like, what do you think that like young people need? And I, in my supreme, I think I was 22, ignorance, was like, you got to get rid of birthright.
Oh,
And they were like,
tea.
what? And they're like, "Oh no." I was like, it's not working." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And I'm sure the entire time we're like, "Shut up." Like this is what we do. But I was like, "Look, I just graduated college and I'm seeing people go and engage with this, 10-day fantasy trip and this Disneyland version of Israel, and they come home and they hear about the occupation and they've been given such a brittle narrative that it like totally snaps and they assume everything else you told them is bullshit. So like, could it be longer? Or could they like meet with some leftists or something?" And they were like, no. Like, they were actually really polite considering like how chutzpahdik I was being. Um, but I was like, I have to tell you. Like, I had so assumed. I was like, maybe you haven't heard this before. That this is happening to people. Also say though, like, I went on Birthright at 18 and I was so shocked because I was like, this is a free trip. Like, I'm gonna do a lot of pre-reading. I'm gonna, I've just started taking college Hebrew, but I'm gonna like really study my key phrases. And I got there, I was like, I'm paying a lot less for lunch than everybody else on this trip because I'm asking for it in Hebrew. But I also was like, people didn't like look at a map before they got here or read anything. Or I was like, this is such an opportunity. Why would you not like drink deeply from the well of, potential? And people were like, this is a free trip and I'm here to like get drunk and party and, you know, have this very sexualized
Yeah.
raw experience. I was just like, I was so naive. I was just like, like, oh my God.
I have the same mentality. I'm like, when I travel, I'm just like, I have to earn my right to be here. Like, I watched a bunch of Godard movies before going to Paris. I'm like, they're gonna ask at the airport if I've seen Masculin Féminin.
Exactly. Like, I am ready to talk about the children of Marx and Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
just in case they ask at the airport. Uh,
That's so there are so many nuggets in here that I want to unravel. Um
and also, I'm so sorry. I totally have like rabbi syndrome where
I
I'm like, here is a whole winding anecdote and paragraph without stopping.
I love it. That's the best. I'm like picturing like a page of Talmud just like with the sidebars and the notes. So
The dream. Those are my guys.
I want to go back to rabbinic internship in Guatemala. Yeah, what was that like?
So it was through an organization called Kulanu, which is a organization that supports like returning and like new Jewish communities. And I was really excited to go, like as somebody who converted, to like work with a community where the majority of the people there had also converted. And my mom at the time rightly asked, like, how is this different than like, are you being a missionary? And I was like,
Oh.
I've been asked.
Yeah.
I've been asked to go up. And it's also why I know Sephardic Portuguese trope. I was like, because these are the materials that are available in Spanish. This is what feels like compelling for these people. And so, like, I need to figure out how to best deliver something that feels like not just, again, culturally appropriate, but like asked for. This is like my Spanish is not so good now, but I did at one point it's an internship feel like I was nailing it because I was teaching a class on um Mordecai Kaplan and like what it means that like God is an ontological reality, but not something we physically experience. And I like answered the question in Spanish and I was like, does that make sense? And they were like, Rabina, like you've done it. And it was so validating. They're really, really incredible. Adat Yisrael in Guatemala. I am in no way representative of their relationship to Israel or feelings about Israel or Zionism, to be so clear. They're like not endorsing, but just shouting out a really fabulous, incredible group of super thoughtful, learned, warm, welcoming, hilarious, thoughtful Jews who are in Guatemala City. And they're not the only Jewish community in Guatemala also, but right, there's like a complicated racial dynamic there also. And also like because they're reform and because a lot of them have converted, their relationship with the more established like white Latina community is or Ladino. I actually did not know this before I went to Guatemala, but like what people call like or how people like refer to their Latino or Latina identity is like as Ladino, and they'd be like, no, 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 like Ladino ethnically, not Ladino the language, like not Spaniolit. There was like a whole there's a lot I had to like learn and did not know and just had to be like, yep, I am here to help with Kiddush and also like I'm gonna step in it and I beg your forgiveness.
So yeah, as I love it. It's fair to say you're like a globe-trotting rabbi. So
This is like my soapbox. I'm like, we're a global people, right? Like Judaism is a movable feast. And like it's actually somebody moved around a lot as a kid. I'm like, to be able to go into a shul and be like the tunes are gonna be totally new, but like the liturgy is essentially the same and like we're, rocking out with the same calendar and the same it's a really powerful thing for me. And I'll say like Edgar Morin's I think it's translated often as like multi-rootedness. He's a Sephardic Jew with I think roots in Salonika and Thessaloniki, but writing in French, teaches in France, writes about like and I often teach it like as opposed to like a Deutschite model of diasporism, a multi-rootedness to be like I feel at home in multiple places, and part of that feeling of being at home is by function of participating in and being in a global Jewish community, that I find like so powerful.
yeah, have you been to the Baltics yet? Summer of 2023 did what a JDC trip, Joint Distribution Committee, that serves international Jewish communities, and I call it Baltic Birthright. We went to Finland and Estonia, and it was amazing learning about like the former Soviet Union and
Wait, I was literally just talking to the new rabbinic leadership of Helsinki over Instagram last night
oh my gosh, that's so
because I'm
funny.
obsessed with the Moomins, and I posted a picture of the Brooklyn Public Library,
Yes.
and they like I was like although I was corrected at the library, they're like it's the Moomins, and I was like, again, I'm just gonna step in it. They're little trolls and they're lesbians and separatists, and I love them. Right? They're like a fantasy of like this Finnish heteronormativity is so oppressive. What if I could like live in the woods in a polycule, Tova Janssen. It was like and just be a lesbian separatist and be happy and like bake bread and be a little troll. And anyways, I was just like, I love the Moomins. And she was like, are you in Helsinki? And I was like, I so badly wish I was at the Moomins
It,
in
it's
Helsinki.
amazing.
I
They're
want to go
everywhere.
so badly.
Like Moomin merch shops on every corner. And the funniest part of like chilling with Estonian Jews was like just how like it was the same childhood just in Russian, other than the fact that like a lot of parents still baptize their children to Russian Orthodoxy because they were still like were as like residual trauma from the former Soviet Union. Um, they
There's Pascal's wager, and then there's former Soviet Union lived and experienced trauma and respect.
Yes, but they still sent their kids to summer camp, Jewish summer camp, which is the essential Jewish
It
experience.
sounds like my little brother's experience.
Yeah,
He's a confirmed Episcopalian, but he does love Hillel.
yeah. Did he go to Camp Olamenu of the Baltics?
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was funny talking to people, and they're like, "Yeah, I met my wife at camp," and so like all the Estonian Jewish men who were there were married already, and I was like, "Okay, where are the single men?" Like, okay, I want that EU passport, and they said the single Estonian men moved to Vilnius because Lithuanian girls are the hottest.
Oh. Unfortunately, all I know about Lithuania begins and ends at the Kovno ghetto and the Vilna Gaon.
Yeah, which because my family will listen to this, we're descended from the Vilna Gaon. That's
Oh my
another.
god, that's amazing.
Yeah, we're like there's a hardcover book through my dad's mom. I'm a nepo baby for anti-Hasidism. So
That's incredible.
yeah, it's
Like earning the misnugded.
exactly, it's a legacy I take it very seriously. So like yeah, yelling at people on Instagram traces all the way back to.
Exactly. This is your earned, ancestral spiritual practice, and you should be validated and engaging in it.
Oh my gosh, thank you. And you spoke about narratives, brittle narratives, narratives collapsing. So, if like in the literature that you write and with your platform, like what is the narrative about Israel and Palestine and Jewish peoplehood that we should be telling?
Um, I think that there isn't a single one actually, and that we can tolerate multiple narratives. Like I will say, conversations I've really struggled with sometimes with Israeli colleagues, where they'll say like, "Well, why can't I have my narrative and Palestinians can have theirs, and they just need to respect it?" Like, because I think ultimately like narratives are tools and they shouldn't be the sum total of our identities. And if you're secure actually in your narrative and in your identity, you should be able to listen and engage and actually like write like or minhu, right? To use a Talmudic term, like pit them together and like see my nafkamina, like what comes out and like what new thing might I have missed previously. And that I think comes from actually a place of feeling secure and like building a real emotional and psychological security. But I will say again, a lot of what we do at Partners is saying there is more than one story about what a progressive and just and peaceful future for Israelis and Palestinians look like. And we want to introduce you to the like broad um like slate of opportunities and people and like be in relationship, like real, don't just like turn people into mascots. We worked really closely with hostage families who were at the Begin Gate protests and Kulanu Khatafim at different points when they were trying to like break in and get started more with American audiences. And I've asked people, even as we've been in, I think, what, if 34 days of at least declared ceasefire, please God, like a real ceasefire where people are living and not afraid of the sky or thunder, or their safety in Gaza soon. Um, but like I asked actually somebody recently, I said, what do you think would be different actually in the American Jewish conversation right now if more American Jews knew who Einav Zankauer was?
Hmm.
And like
So
not
for
just
people who don't know,
she's the mother of the hostage release movement in Israel, right? Who I think in a way that is very different than a lot of the American Israeli Jewish hostage families who were speaking to an American audience. And I'm not knocking them either. I think like right, everybody was using the tools at their disposal. But Einav was I mean, she's incredible. She like people call her the lioness, right? Just like caging herself under a bridge.
Hmm. It was
Or like her they held at one point a mock wedding with her, God willing, her future daughter-in-law, who had also been taken hostage and was returned earlier from Gaza, and they were still waiting for Matan, who thank God is now home. Right. And they held like a mock wedding to emphasize the way that their lives were continuing to be put on hold by the decisions of the Netanyahu government. And not just put on hold, but like grievously at risk. And for emphasizing like these are not individuals, this is whole families, whole communities that are affected by this. But these were also hostage families who were articulating like solidarity and deep understanding of what Gazan civilians were going through, despite like their clear and deep and consistent opposition to Hamas, who like was impacting them primarily, um, just like really incredible people. But like I think so. We're trying to that is a much harder and more complex conversation than bring them home.
hmm
But I wonder, and I wonder with a lot of grief about what would the last what could things have looked like, right, if more Americans, especially more American Jews, had a deeper and complexer and actually more a sense of accountability to hostage families and what they were asking for. Um
yeah,
and like the specifics of what they were asking for.
yeah. It feels like the the lack of nuance on birthright then just continues. People are still only in it for the sexy times and the free trip.
Or I think people say, I don't want to get political because my affiliation is emotional. But your affiliation with a state is always going to be political. It's a
Hmm.
political project, and it can be. And politics are not devoid of emotion. But like to say, like we can't actually divorce those two things, and that doesn't need to be like threatening. That actually is having a honest and more coherent conversation. And like I believe it is a life-saving conversation, right? When we can have a more robust conversation to say like beyond our dreams of what Israel could be, or the Ahad Ha'am vision of liberal Zionism, to say what is actually happening on the ground and to whom do we feel accountable and how are we going to respond, and what interventions might we as American Jews make to Palestinians and Israelis who are building progressive movements for freedom and peace and to live. And how do we like actually act out in that relationship in a way that is like real and not a fantasy?
Amen. And what gives you hope, or if there are any specific people we can follow, um who are the partners?
Um, Oh my gosh, there's just so many. Right, we have actually on our webpage a whole like Kolot Voices of Hope series. There's so many NGOs that are doing like very interesting binational work, right? Combatants for Peace, Rabbis for Human Rights, Standing Together. I think like there's a lot of names that people know, but there's also groups that people like aren't are as aware of. We have a piece coming out on an organization called Lisan, which is like doing and not outside of an Ulpan model, doing a like very practical Hebrew Arabic language exchange for working Palestinian moms in East Jerusalem, to say like what is actually the Hebrew skills that you need to not feel afraid on the bus, and also how then do your Hebrew instructors like learn better relational, like not state security based Arabic, in a way that like we cannot, the long-term goal, ideally is to shift the power balance outside of this room, but also how can we be attentive to power in this language exchange, like within this room, as a language learning process. This is not an Ulpan, is doing it in a really different way, with English speakers and Hebrew speakers and Arabic speakers out of Tel Aviv also. Like I think their work is incredible. The Center for Jewish Nonviolence, the work of Rabbi Arik Asherman, who I think has been named on this podcast a lot, right, doing long-term protective presence work. I just had a board member spend a month with him this summer in the West Bank. And I think everybody who's out right now with the olive harvest is putting their bodies on the line, and also like exercising their privilege in a way that is not just like checking them like, I mean, can I use my bib? But like actually, right, like if you are Jewish and you get hit with a drone, sometimes the IDF will, with settler drone and the olive harvest, sometimes the IDF will like force settlers to apologize to you,
W-
which is like unthinkable,
Wow.
right? Like if you're a young Palestinian person engaging the olive harvest, that is not the outcome you're going to get if somebody like flies a drone and then shows up with guns.
Yeah,
Like it really, it's on the ground. It's life saving. I will say within the Knesset also, right. I know people are not, electoral politics are not going to save us and are, solely. And your vote is not a Valentine, to quote Rebecca Solnit. But I will say, the way in which the Democratic Party, who we work with, has been willing to sort of break. There is among Zionist parties in Israel and the Knesset, right? There's a very deep, long lasting, like basically we don't talk to Arab majority parties and we don't work with them. And like the Democrat team have been very publicly willing to go, well, that's BS. Like this is 20% of the country that we are elected to represent. And like that, what are we doing? And as well, like the good people at Hadash are putting the work in. Day in and day out in the Knesset. I had the opportunity as a rabbinical student actually to meet member of Knesset, member of Israeli Parliament, um, Aida Tuma Suleiman, and just remember being like totally blown away by her conviction and the thoughtfulness of her politics. Or right, like I got into this when Dov Hanin was with Hadash and um, still in politics. I'm an Oda, like all of these people really like again doing the like messy coalition work. Um, I did an op-ed in Haaretz recently actually about hearing Hever Knesset, member Knesset, somebody I've learned a lot from and had the opportunity to meet this year. Um, is Dr. Nesreen Haddad Haj Yahya, who is does like a lot of incredible things with like data on Palestinian citizens of Israel and what like financial success and what like university and like integration, and I really mean like integration as in like access to education, right, like what would it mean for uh, right. And again, this is a messy, we rabbinically, right, we have like the lachatchila ideal situation, we have the b'diavad or the b'diavad situation, and this is all kind of like a b'diavad conversation, right, like. But when we look at the power dynamics as they are and the reality of the state as it is, like it's deeply meaningful to say what are the um what actually would need to change for Palestinian citizens of Israel, like within current state structures, and then what are the binational groups that are working together to dream of what a future would look like, and right, there's a lot of disagreement as to what political situation far off would like best serve the needs and reflect the like human rights needs of everyone on the ground. But like we work really closely with A Land for All, Two States, One Homeland, that proposes a confederation model, which I think just got read at the UN as part of the French-Saudi collaboration. I did a webinar where I talked to Ofer Bronstein, who's the French Prime Minister's like special envoy on Israel-Palestine, and what he's talking about, right, even about the Saudi French proposal, right, is
what is the
let's.
proposal? Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. He's like, it's a proposal, right, to recognize a Palestinian state, not just to say like, rubber stamp, like, yay, Palestine, but like you're still all suffering. Good Lord, let's like not actually engage any Palestinian people, but to say again, the level and the power dynamic on the ground as it is so deeply unequal, and like right to even like name it as unequal feels like a gross understatement. But what Ofer explained, right, he's like to at least meet at the table as equals, not to pretend that everything that happened outside the door isn't happening, not to pretend that we haven't just like witnessed, both the horrific terror attacks of October 7th and a subsequent genocide in Gaza, but to say when we are able to negotiate from a place of two states, it gives it like we can build and imagine something going forward that is also different. Like it doesn't negate what is actually happening, but it's a way of saying, I think, how do we set the table for negotiations to where we can narrow some of this deep and you know deep and when I say imbalance of power, not just in the microcosm of Israel and Palestine, but also like the investment of states around the world in Israel and Palestine that has like supported the status quo, right? Israel and Palestine didn't get here by themselves.
The French are not
And we were
innocent.
supposed to talk about the French. Oh my God, I haven't even talked about like San Remo and Sykes-Picot and like how, I for the longest time I know Clemenceau as a subway line and a subway stop on my parents' metro line, and then I like look at it, I'm like, no, Clemenceau, like what have you agreed to under the table for oil? This is all your fault. Like it's really all your fault.
I've had this.
Right, but to say I actually think it's very fitting in a way that I would I love to see a world in which France gets up and says like, we are doing this DAFCA because we are responsible, especially and particularly because we are taking accountability for fueling this fire with and like plotting to profit as a state from the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and creating a gaping colonial wound. Um, yes, that is probably not going to happen. So again, lachatchila, I would like tshuva.
Yes.
Right. But it's very powerful, I think, actually, to see um a a gesture at this, but even more, right, if I want to be very, very pragmatic, I want powerful global actors to get behind human rights. And if they have to make themselves feel like they are, a big effing deal and the leaders of the free world for doing it, okay, whatever ego massage you need to just do the right thing to like save some lives and and create a real and lasting, not just like ceasefire, but future of human rights for everyone, then like, okay, have the ego massage and the international accolades. Because like again, at the end of the day, that it's all a tool to support everyone's ability to like live in safety and dignity on a land that is sacred and is a homeland for two people.
And it doesn't negate the trauma. If anything, the best way to honor the trauma is to assure that it doesn't happen again. Like I'm not a parent yet, but I can only imagine how just that just raises the stakes for everything, wanting to assure that your kid lives in a better world than the one that we have right now, because this one sucks. So I'm
Well,
incredibly grateful to you and your partners for doing the work. Like I think a lot of people who are just maybe see the violence at the olive harvest or in Gaza on their phone for the first times. And if they're willing to scrutinize it and they don't know where to plug in, know that you're not starting from scratch. There are people who have been doing it for years. There are NGOs, institutions, social movements that you can plug into. You don't have to learn about the Sykes-Picot Agreement. You could start today.
exactly. And I think like right the activation and that moment of feeling really activated is not actually the end. It's an entry into the cycle. I'll just plug briefly a research that we released earlier this fall, is that we realized so many people in the Jewish community, especially North America, were really struggling around the word genocide. And it had nothing to do with actually with facts. It was
Mm-hmm.
all about people's feelings. And of course it was all about people's feelings. And so we created, like, we called it a guide for reflection and discernment about genocide, to say, we like talked to a lot of different people in a lot of different organizations. And we said, like, what actually is both the information and the affirmation that our community will need to actually get emotionally organized enough to have this conversation, because it's not going anywhere, and like we are going to have it. And I totally get that, like, for some people it is a ridiculous thing to be like, I'm going to handhold people's um I'm going to handhold people and sit them down and treat them really nicely so they can have a conversation about how they or institutions or states that they love may be complicit in genocide. But at the same time, if we don't, like, that's my lane. It doesn't have to be everybody's lane,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like for me, this is pastoral care, actually, to say, how do I help hold you through the crisis? Because if you've become that invested in a militant far right vision of nationalism that you can't have this conversation, that you can't acknowledge people's humanity, like actually this is like trauma work that has to be done. This is spiritual work that has to be done. Like I couldn't do this job if I wasn't a rabbi. And I think I will say one thing about being, I've learned as a parent about trauma also, is that like trauma is it's a bus route. And it's not a one-time thing, that healing from trauma is actually something you have to return to again and again and again. And so if you don't address it perfectly, actually the pressure is off one time. because it's going to keep bubbling up over and over repeatedly as a part of a healing process. And instead of going, oh my God, it keeps coming up, we can't get rid of it. Instead go, oh my God, this is like a horrible, sick and twisted gift. And also there is another chance to have a better conversation. There's another chance to get this right. There's another chance to address this, because the bus is going to keep like coming back around to the trauma bus stop, and to like build off and build more complex and thoughtful conversations. Again, not complexity for the sake of like nuance and complexity, but like actually for digging into and getting emotionally organized enough to like confront people's humanity. Because I don't know how it happened, but we have gotten to a place where a lot of people in our community like freak out when they're being asked to confront other people's humanity, particularly the humanity of Palestinians.
Yeah, and there's no deadline, or we have the rest of our lives to get it right, and we have to.
We have generations to heal from this, actually. Like, it's an opportunity. We have generations to heal from this, and we don't legislate from a place of activation. We don't do statecraft and policy from a place of activate. Like, it's I think it's both in some ways. Like, let's keep getting better at this, and we don't wait until we're completely healed to take accountability and address clear problems, whether they've come out of trauma, whether they've come out of the interests of European powers who poured money and weapons, and right, Americans first and foremost, who poured money and weapons into this region. We can actually do it all at once, and it's going to be like a complex approach, because it is a complex issue. And again, I don't mean a complex issue in that like it's really complicated and complex to see that Palestinians are people. No, like, oh my God, Palestinians are people and they deserve to live. Jews and Israelis are people and they deserve to live. That part is not like there was a genocide. That part is not complex, but like rather that all of the actors at the table and all of the pieces from the state to the NGO to the interpersonal, the grassroots levels are all going to have to be part of a process of moving forward.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. If there's one thing that like Jews do well is reconstruct after tragedy. Like my favorite Jewish tradition, this sounds so goth of me, is Shiva. Shiva rules. Shiva's
oh my God, we're so good at it.
Shiva's genius. That like
sit in your feelings.
Yeah,
and feel them.
And be
and then you come back to it every year and not live in it forever, but like have a little piece of like, oh my God, this was right. Like this loss was so tremendous. It will alter the calendar of my life for the rest of my life.
Wow. Yes. And you can't do it alone. You need at least nine other people to say the prayer. So we can't do this alone.
And you're like walked out of it. Also, right?
Yeah.
Like, sorry, now I'm getting like full rabbi on you.
Oh, I love it.
I'm letting you finish. I'm like actively, enthusiastically interrupting and also trying to drosh everything you say. I'm just being a rabbi and being a Jew. But like, we walk each other out of it. You go like, yes, you're shattered and you can't stay sitting down in your living room in your socks forever. Like, we'll walk you around the block and then we're going to walk you back into shul and then like walk you back into going to weddings and parties. If you take like the traditional year off of all of this and like walk you back into life of like, we see your pain and that doesn't mean we let you off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
And you still have to be part of this community.
That's amazing. And I think, a perfect metaphor. So thank you for doing the work. Where can people find you?
A lot of places, but let me pull some of them up. So our website is progressiveisrael.org, and we're partners for Progressive Israel or partners number 4 Israel at a lot of different social media sites. And find us, interact with us, get on our email list. And we're also like around, right? Like we have hubs in DC, in New York, growing in LA and Philadelphia, and a couple of others, Chicago. Like find your local partners, people to build community. We're not doing this alone. Oh my God, you could be hurt and we'll hold your hand and get you out of it. Come find us. We're here for you.
Exactly. Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for listening and or watching War is Stupid, an anti-war podcast about war. Please subscribe, rate and review. Tell your dads. We'll see you next time.